So tonight, first and foremost, we are learning Le'ilu Nishmat Yecheskel ben Avraham. We are also welcoming every woman to join us on our women's class on Thursdays at BJX, 1601 Quentin Road, 8 p.m. Wow. Yeah, okay. So now we're getting a new series. It's argumentatively, like, maybe this may be the most important series that I've done so far. Like, it's ridiculous how important this is, and also how misunderstood this topic is as well to the larger audience. What people don't realize is what I've tried to create since about maybe 2 years ago is when I started like certain series, I actually did it in a certain specific order. For example, I started off like with the divinity series. So a divinity series is where I speak about how do you prove that there is a God. Now, once you know that there's a God, how do you know which religion is right? Maybe there's other religions that are correct. And then once we figure out which religion is correct in Judaism, then we figure out, like, wait a minute, but now that we know that Judaism is the right one, how do we know that? And then we prove that. But then we have all the rabbinic laws. Like, maybe the rabbis changed the authentic Judaism. So we go and we explain all these different categories and topics in the divinity series. Then after that, we spoke about the 13 principles of faith. This is the foundation of Judaism. You have to know, so now that you know that Judaism is real, now what is the foundation of Judaism? And now that you have the foundation of Judaism, this is really what comes afterwards. What comes afterwards is Emunah. Emunah and Bitachon. How do we relate, how do we live that in our daily lives, and what effect that does to our lives? Now, in order to understand the importance of this, everyone, and I mean everyone without like excluding anybody, has certain questions in their lives. For example, you have people that ask questions like, what's the purpose of the life? What's the reason that I'm here? What's the meaning of the life? How should I live my life? Now that I'm living my life, people have questions on like day-to-day things, like what should I do in certain scenarios? What should I do in certain circumstances? And these questions come up, and if they don't come up, they should come up, because this is something that you should think about, constantly. Like, how are we supposed to live our lives? How are we supposed to deal with things that happen in our lives? But if we take it one step further, we have situations where every single person have things that are important to them. And whatever is important to you, let's call it chase. You chase after those things. So for example, let's say you have a person who the most important thing is money to this person. So what they do is they focus completely their life only about money. And the way that it works, so let's say if it's a man, so the man is constantly, working around the clock. If it's a woman, she could also be working, or if she's dating, she could be only looking for somebody who has a big bank account, or looks like they have a big bank account. Very big difference, obviously, between those two. But you have people that go and they chase after the pleasure, after happiness, after relationships, after desires, and everybody has their focus in their life. Now, what's very interesting is that not always what you want, what you chase, what you desire is what you achieve. Sometimes it's what you don't chase you achieve, and what your friend or your neighbor or your acquaintance, what they don't chase, they achieve. But what's interesting is that you wish you could swap. Like, you want what they have, they want what you have. And you look at an example, let's say somebody is going and all they want in their life is just to get married. They want to go and they want to get married, and let's say they're older and they tried and they couldn't do it. And then, but they have a lot of money. Then you have another person who has, Baruch Hashem, a large family, and all they want in their life is money. Like, all they care about is money, 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 money. And this person, all they care about is family. They have so much money, but they have no one to share with. So when you look at these two opposite angles, here you have one person's desire that they didn't achieve, and here you have this person's desire what didn't achieve, and really they all want what each other have. And the question that usually comes up is why? Why is it that way? It seems unfair. Why is it that he got it or she got it and I didn't? Why is it that they have what I want and I have what they want? It's really unfortunate. If we take it a step further, if you ask somebody, it's unfortunate only in one circumstance. If, let's say you ask somebody who has a lot of money, would you give it all up for a family? They would say yes in a heartbeat. Let's say you ask somebody with a family, would you give it all up for money? I don't want to finish all that sentence, not the people that I spoke to. But the questions really go on to even a more exact, circumstantial situations. For example, on a day-to-day basis, somebody could wake up, they could have a stomachache. they could have a toothache. Their eye could be, bothering them. And another day, everything could be perfect. And they're like, why? Why is this day so difficult? And why is you ever had it that one day it's just like whatever can go back after a certain point in your day? You're like, oh, of course. I'm not surprised anymore. Yeah, when are the aliens gonna come and zap me up? I'm ready for it. And then you have another day where like everything you do is like amazing, and you're like, this has been a great day, very successful. And you ask why? Why is it that way? The people usually that ask the question why are the people that have the most sufferings in their life. You never have a very successful person who has a very happy marriage, who has a very good family, who has everything going, learning to why everything's amazing, never stops, you should. But unfortunately, most of the time, they don't stop and say, why did God give me so much blessing? Like, how do I deserve this? Where do people ask the questions? When people go through sufferings in life, when people go through tribulations and go through troubles, all of a sudden that starts piquing their interest and starts asking questions. Which is, by the way, a step a little bit that you should think about. Like, you don't want God to send you the troubles. You don't want God to send you those reminders. Maybe start thinking about those questions before God sends you those questions that you should be asked. So, the answer to all these questions is really one word. Well, I guess it's two. It's Emunah and Bitachon. It's a different class of what's the difference between these two. But Emunah really answers all life's problems, questions, issues that a person has to deal with. You think about it. Let's say somebody goes and they get kidnapped, and they're sitting over there and they're like in chains, like beyond anybody's imagination, and they trying whatever they could to free themselves, and they don't realize that their key to all their answers, well, they're trying to like rip the chains apart or like break their, there's a way, I don't know what it is, but like you break your wrist or your thumb so you could squeeze your hand out. They try all these different things of how to go and how to come out of the out of the guards that they have. And what they don't realize, if they would just open their eyes and stop, like just relax for a second and focus, and they would see that there was a key in front of them the whole time. Everybody in life goes through troubles and issues. And if we stop for a second and say, there's a key that's sitting right in front of us our entire life. That key is Emunah. Emunah is the key that answers all life's problems. Now, in order to understand the concept, the basis of Emunah, you have to know one thing, that there is a creator. Now, people ask me all the time, like, why are you so obsessed with atheism? Like, why are you always speaking about it? Just like move on. Like, because if you don't believe in God, then everything falls apart. Maybe it's also because of the people that I deal with. I don't know. But it's something that it's the beginning of everything. Because if you don't believe in God, then there's nothing. You can't talk about Torah. You can't talk about Emunah, Bitachon, Hashgacha. You can't talk about anything really, because everything based off one foundation, that there is a God. So Emunah also begins with one thing, and that is that there is a God. Now, what does it mean that there is a God? There is a God that went and created the entire universe. Not only did God create the entire universe, but He created every single iota of your existence. Like every single issue and thing that you deal with is from God. Even things that you may think is your fault. Like everything that happens is from God. And not only that, God is always overlooking you. I was speaking to a Persian community, and I asked if they know something, a terminology called, I think it's a helicopter parent. Yes. And they were like, everyone was like that. I'm like, I guess Persian parents are like that. Like, I don't know. I'm not racist or anything, but whatever. It's actually a good thing. So we're like, you have a parent that's like constantly like, when are you coming home? Who are you doing? Like what's going on? Who are you buying drugs for? Like, oh, whatever it is, depending on the kid, right? Obviously. So like, you have different things that the parent is like knows everything about the child. God is a helicopter God. God knows everything that's happening to you. God is always on the phone, but you're not answering sometimes. That's the problem. You're ignoring the phone call. But God is always like, what are you doing? Where are you going with? Who are you going out with? What's going on? How are you dressing? What are you learning? What are you listening to? So many things. What are you watching? So many things that are focusing. God is just constantly focusing on you. To explain this, there was once a king. This was a king that was very focused on the community. He wanted to know how his kingdom was running. You think about think about like a CEO. Let's say there's certain owners of businesses that what they do is that they hire a bunch of people and they don't want to know anything about it. Like just do your thing. Then like I don't know who works for me. I don't know like what's going on. I don't care as long as the money is coming in. I am good. People that are smiling now, I know you work for those type of people. Then you have other people that they know everything that's going on with you. They'll come over to you. They could be, like a Fortune 500 company. Doesn't matter. But they know everything that goes on. How is it going? How is everything? They are very involved with the situation. This king was very involved in the situation. So he didn't just sit in his castle and just, set out his decrees. He went, and every so often he would go and he would visit every town and see how the people are doing. One time he visited this town, and there was a beggar that was collecting money and going around. And he saw the king. King was traveling through with on the train, going through from town to town. And the beggar was like awestruck. He always wondered, imagine this locomotive, how awesome it will be. I'm not talking about the Q train or the B train, right? I'm talking about like the serious trains, where there was a dining section, and there was a sleeping quarter. Maybe I'm talking to first class passengers only, but whatever it is, right? And then there was the cattle, right? Part where obviously it's meant for humans that are cattle, whatever. Okay, so anyways, so you have this huge, beautiful train, but this is the Air Train 1, right? So this is where it wouldn't be called Air Train 1. Train Force 1, right? Okay, is my mind working? So you have this train running by the king, and it stops by, sees this beggar. And the beggar is drooling on the train. And the king goes and says, do you want to join the entourage? And he's like, yes, please. Yeah, can I do it? And he's like, absolutely, come on in. And the beggar just goes on, and he sits, in his seat over there. He's so excited. He's seeing over there, the train is moving so fast. He's never been something moving that so fast. And then after about an hour, he starts thinking, he's like, wait a minute. He says, the way that I survive is that I go from town to town, and I collect charity, and I collect money. And once I have the money that I'm able to go and buy maybe some food, some shelter, whatever it is. He says, but now I'm sitting on the train over here. How am I going to get food? How am I going to be able to survive? We could be days on this train for all I know. I could die from starvation. And he starts panicking. So he runs over to the head guard and says, I need to speak to the king. I need to speak to the king right now. So the guard, figures it's an emergency, brings him straight into the king, and he goes over to the king and says, my dear king, I am so grateful. I'm so happy that you were able to, you brought me onto this train, to this amazing experience, but I need to go off. And the king says, why do you need to go off? And he says, I didn't pack any provisions. I didn't pack any food. Usually, if I would have known it, I would have packed in advance. I would have collected in advance. I know that I would have it. In the olden days, when you go traveling, you don't check off a box that says Glock kosher meal. You would have to go and bring whatever food that you want on the ship, on whatever the train, because if not, you would not have any food to eat. So he says, I don't have anything to survive with. So as he's going and as he's speaking to the king, suddenly there's a loudspeaker, right? There's somebody, ding dong, I don't know if they did that, right? And there was a British woman somehow. She goes and says, will everybody please make their way to the dining room, and lunch will be served. And so as he's going and as he's complaining, as he's speaking about this to the king, he's going and he's stop this. Oh, he's going and all the advisors that were sitting around the king started laughing. Here's this guy sweating. He's so nervous. He's going to die from starvation. And meanwhile, he didn't realize that if the king brought you on the ship, on the train or whatever it was, the king's going to take care of you. Don't worry about food. The last thing that you need to do, if you have, the king or the president coming and be like, hey, listen, I need you, come on Air Force One. You're not going to be like, well, I didn't pack any bags. Don't worry. The Secret Service will take care of you. It's the last thing that you need to worry about is about, how are you going to go survive. They'll take care of you. So everyone started laughing. And then they went, and obviously the king, he sat there and he ate to his heart's, to his heart's content. But really, we're like that the same way. God goes and invites us to his world. And he says, come, I want you. You're here for a reason, for a purpose. And we start nervous. How are we going to make money? How are we going to eat our next meal? How are we going to survive? Who are we going to marry? What are we going to do? And we're so nervous about it. We come, we're like, God, what are you going to do? Be like, wait a minute. I invited you on my train, the world. It's don't you think I'm going to take care of you? Don't you think I'm going to handle all of your issues? You're on my train. You're on my ride. I got you. I will take care of you. Emunah has the ability to go, because if you live your life without Emunah and Bitachon, then that's fine. You're by yourself. You're this Rome passenger that snuck on, into the luggage situation over there, and you're sitting over there. Yeah, who knows with it? But if you realize that God put you on this earth, that God gave you a reason for being here, and God invited you to be here, because you're here, that's obviously you're in, this world is, by the way, is by invitation only. You can't sign up and be like, yeah, Oh, ticket for one, please. 120 years. I'll take it. Round trip, please, not one way. So you go over there. Well, sometimes you have a layover in different places. It's a warm place, you get a tan. But you always. So in any case, you go over there and you think about it. Like God will take care of you. He put you on this earth. But when we think about Emunah, we think about Bitachon, we have to understand it from two aspects. So we always think about it like God, God will heal us, God will save us, God will take care of us. We also have to think about it for a second that God actually put you in this situation as well. Like, just like God heals, God also strikes. Just like God makes rich, God also makes poor. Like God heals someone, God makes someone sick. It all comes from one source and one source only. And the reason why this is important is that when, God forbid, somebody goes and gets in a tough situation, they have to think about it. Why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Maybe there's something that I need to do. Maybe I'm in the wrong path. Maybe I'm in the wrong track. Maybe I have to change lanes. When there was once a billionaire that was very invested in his family. But like, if somebody was able to figure out a way that they're somehow related, there are certain people that are like that. That you meet them, you try to figure out how they are related to you. Be like, well, where are you from? Persia, small place. Well, maybe we're related, right? I know in the Gorski community, right? Everyone's practically related to everyone. You think about it, it's a huge community, but somehow everyone's related to everyone. But you think all these things are sort of like all related. So everybody would try to go and somehow find a way to be related to this billionaire because he would take care of you. Now, why would he take care of you? Because when he had a child, and when his child was born, it was separated from him. And for the longest time, he was trying to, find this child, and he couldn't find the child, and he felt such as a loss that whatever family that he had, he tried to go and he tried to make up for it in a certain sense. That anything that you wanted, you are taken care of. You need money, you need business, you need home, whatever it is that he could do, he will take care of it. Now imagine there was a guy who had a very difficult life, and he's born an orphan, had no parents, had no money, nothing, and suddenly someone comes over to him, does a DNA, what is it, 23andMe? Is that what it is? Did I say it right? Okay. He does a DNA test and be like, are you kidding me? You're the son of that multi-billionaire who's looking and searching the entire world for his son. You're that son. You're like taken care of for the rest of your life. You have nothing to worry about. Imagine the euphoria. Imagine the happiness. Imagine the serenity, the peacefulness that this person would have. This person all of a sudden be like, well, there's nothing that I need to worry about. My father has been searching for me for his entire life. Like, he wants me so badly. He wants to shower me with, just look what he does to people that are not his children. So this is how we should think when we think about God. We are God's children. God takes care of everybody, the entire world. Imagine how much more so when we come home, we say, listen, God, we're listening to your Torah. We're doing your mitzvah. We're doing what you have to do. You think God's not going to take care of you? There's a rule that if you do what's right, you don't get harmed, you don't get hurt. There was a famous story. The story was I don't know, it was like all over the place. It was written in Rabbi David Asher's book on living Emunah. It was, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rabbi Yoel Gold did a thing on it, but maybe he didn't. The story that happened quite a few years ago, on Motzei Tisha B'Av, there was a rabbi and his wife that rented a house in Lakewood for the summer. And while everybody knows it already. I can see it already. Who knows what I'm talking about. Look how famous the story is. I just have to say the address, and people are like, "Yeah, we know this. Yeah, it was a good one." Yeah, I will. So this rabbi lived in Lakewood, and the rabbi wakes up at 3:30 in the morning, and he wakes up with like a little bit of chest discomfort. Now, he's not sure. Usually, if anybody is familiar with the healthcare field, if you have chest discomfort, it could either be like something like crazy serious, like a heart attack, or it could be something like completely the other thing, like it's just indigestion, or something like not serious at all. So he's like, I think he's talking to his wife, like, I have a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of pain. Maybe I should call, I don't know, should we call? They decided they're going to call Hatzalah. They're going to call them, but they say, don't put your sirens on, just, just in case, just come check it. So the Rebbitzin goes and says, fine, let's call Hatzalah. And she stops and be like, wait a minute, we're in Lakewood. I don't know what the number for Hatzalah is. I said, I have no idea. She runs to the phone, she figures she doesn't know what, and she sees on the phone, speed dial 1, Hatzalah. She's like, this is unbelievable. She's renting the home. It's not her house. Renting home for the summer. She goes, she she hits speed dial, she speaks to the Hatzalah guy, and the dispatcher, they tells her, listen, I don't think it's an emergency. If you have someone in the area, can you please send someone to check over my husband, has some sort of chest discomfort, no need to put on sirens, no need to make a little bit of a hectic thing, just to double check. So they said, fine, they'll place the call. 30 seconds later, there is a team of paramedics that show up at her door without sirens, and they're carrying this big, huge machine, with them. And she's like, what's going on over here? You figure one guy, in a Honda Pilot, whatever it is, coming in, or Honda Odyssey, depending on where you live, right? So you're coming over there, and just checking you with your, with this blood pressure cuff and whatnot. And they come in with a team of paramedics and this huge machine, and they come over there and they start hooking him up, and they start assessing, and they see that right then and there he's in the middle of a huge heart attack, like a massive heart attack. There is a certain artery that when it gets clogged, when a person has a heart attack, it's known as the widowmaker. Why? Because people don't survive from that. It's very hard to detect and very hard to come out of. But they happen to have a specific machine that detected it, and as they were actually they were plugged into him, and while they saw the heart attack, and he went unconscious, and they were able to immediately go and shock him and bring him back. And he was able, he was brought back to, Baruch brought back life. Obviously, he went and, checked through it. The next day, or the following, days, the wife was thinking about it, be like, wait a minute, how did this happen? And she thought it was right after Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, there's very famous, the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, videos that everyone watches. And in there was a very, very particular message that, sort of like a forgiving type of message. Like if someone hurts you and someone harms you, forgive them. That night, so his situation happened 3:30 in the morning. 1:30 in the morning, the Rebbetzin gets a text message. And in there, it's something that it could go really bad, like something that really hurt, and it could really affect her, and it could really, cause some issues. And she decided, because of the video that she watched, because of the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation video, she decided she's going to go and forgive this person. And later, she was thinking about it. She's like, how is it that my husband got saved? It must be a merit of the forgiveness that I went and I had on this person at 1:30 in the morning, 2 hours prior to this incident. So she decides, like a good Jew, hakarat hatov. Let me call the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation and tell them, that they helped save my husband's life. So she calls up the organization. There's a guy that answers, says, by the way, and she tells him the story. And he's like, wait a minute, you're the house, and like that. He's like, you only know half the story. It's like, let me tell you the other side of the story. He says, the Hatzalah guy that came to your house, he's my brother-in-law. He says, did you ever think about why they had a team of paramedics, at 3:30 in the morning, 30 seconds away from your house? Like, what was going on? He says, let me tell you the other side of the story. He says, my brother-in-law got a phone call a day or two prior to that his son was in sleepaway camp in the summer, and he wasn't feeling well. So they brought him to a nearby clinic. It turned out that he had an infection, and it affected his heart. And the clinic wanted to go and send him to the nearest hospital, because they figured it was something serious and something that has to look at. So the father, which was a Torah member, goes to the clinic and says, do me a favor, send me over your information, your diagnosis. I want to show it to my primary care physician, my son's doctor, and I want him to go and take a look at it. They send over the information, it brings it to the doctor, and the doctor looks at it and says, wait a minute. He's like, this is something really serious. Don't just send it to some Catskill, nothing wrong with the Catskill Mountain, whatever hospitals. He says, you got to send it to the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. So there's a high-end children's hospital there. That's where you got to go. So the father calls back and says, I want my child to be transported to the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. So the clinic goes and says, we're not paying for that transport. He's like, we have a hospital right over here. Why should we schlep? It was about a 4-hour drive. Why should we schlep 4 hours, to drive him when we have the hospital right over here? So the father makes a few phone calls and says, you know what? I'm going to transport him myself. He brings out a Tzala, truck and does a transport. When the doctor, when the father tells the doctor about this, the doctor says, listen, you're transporting your son, you have to have a team of paramedics with you, because just in case, God forbid, something goes wrong, and you have to have a very specific machine that's very advanced that detects certain things in the heart, certain anomalies in the heart, in case, God forbid, something goes wrong. So he says, fine. He gets a machine, he gets a team of paramedics, and they drive from Lakewood to the Catskills, which is, I don't know, roughly let's say 3 hours. And then they get to the Catskills, they drive from the Catskills to Philadelphia, roughly about 4 hours. And then about 3:30 in the morning, they're on the way back from Philadelphia back to Lakewood. Now, everybody on the bus, on the ambulance, is exhausted. And they tell him, he says, listen, exit 89, exit 89. Make sure you don't forget, we're so tired, exit, and like, I got it, I'll go and exit, fine, I'll do it. Obviously, it gets missed. He goes off at the next exit, or the exit afterwards. And as he gets off the next exit afterwards, all of a sudden they get a phone call on the radios regarding this situation that goes on. And be like, wait a minute, this is, we missed the exit. The house is literally 30 seconds away. This must be from Shemayim, must be from God. Let's go, let's drive up. So they have a team of paramedics at 3:30 in the morning, right outside this rabbi's house, with all this machine. They go up, and they all come out over there with this entire machine, and they go and they save his life. And they completely, and because of that, because of everything that happened, that's how he went and saved his life. The story doesn't end there. It gets even better. That the following days, the owner of the house heard that her tenant that was renting, the rabbi and the Rebbitzin, had a situation. So she calls him up, is everything okay? So the Rebbitzin goes and says, everything Baruch Hashem is okay. I want to thank you that, I didn't have Atzal's number. And I saw on your, speed dial, you had Atzal right over there. And she's like, you don't even know half the story. Let me tell you the other half of the story. He says, we bought new phone systems for the entire house in Lakewood. But then I wanted to buy another new phone system for our house in the country. But it was, for some reason, it didn't work out. I couldn't go and buy the new phone system. So I figured what I'll do is I'll detach all the new phones that I put up at the house in Lakewood. I'll bring it up to the country. When I come back, I'll put my old, another new phone system in there. Meanwhile, I took my old phones and I plugged them back into the Lakewood house. My new phones do not have the speed dial of Hatzalah. Only my own phones have the speed dial of Hatzalah. So somehow God made it for like a few months that I would not be able to buy a new phone system, that I would be able to bring it to the country so that you would have the old phone system, which would have that number, the speed dial for Hatzalah. But it doesn't even stop over there. The son, that they transported, it was no even hard issue. It was all false alarm. It was no even issue with that. So meaning what happened? That God orchestrated everything to happen. That this rabbi had to go through something, but he's not going to get harmed. Meaning that God controls if it's something that you need to go through, then you will go through. If something that you don't need to go through, you could be in the most suburban area, in whatever it is, God will send a team of paramedics with the most advanced equipment to go and save you. But again, you can have people that are in the hospital that, God forbid, go through a heart attack and they die, and somehow it was missed. Why? Because everything happens directly from God. God oversees every single iota, every single thing that happens. Now, when we understand the concept of going through troubles in life, going through issues in life, this is known as what people usually call it as kaparot. You have al pi Kabbalah, there's certain tikkunim that a person has to go through. Meaning that if a person in their life has to go through a certain amount of sufferings to sort of cleanse themselves, cleanse their soul of problems that they may have had in this life, in previous life, not going to get into it. The importance of knowing about this is that when you know something, it's so much easier to deal with. If you think about it like this, let's say you have, let's say somebody has tooth pain. Tooth pain is very painful. Probably the most, there's childbirth and tooth pain. I'm just guesstimating, right? Whatever. It's really painful, right? It's really, really painful, tooth pain.
It's incapacitating.
Right. It's you can't, if you think about it, it's weird. You have a tiny little hole in your tooth, you can't focus. Your day is done, or your whatever, depending on the person. So when you go and when you try to think about the tooth pain, it's so incapacitating that you can't do anything in life. You can't do anything. But let's say you have a tooth pain, but it's while you're sitting and the dentist is, I don't want to get into the dentist. I don't know why they need a needle that's about 6 feet. I don't know if they're going into your soul through your gums for the size of that needle. But let's say they're going over there, right? And they're using construction equipment to fix your tooth. And it sounds like construction equipment also. For all you know, you have a jackhammer. They're sitting over there and you're sitting over there is any painful? No, it's nothing. You have you drooling on one side. You have a dentist. You're going through the same exact pain, but you're sitting in front of a dentist. I don't know why they talk to you while you have 6 tubes in your mouth and a power drill going through your soul. But how's life? How's everything? Is everything okay? And you're sitting over there, but you're going through pain. But can you handle it? You can handle it. Okay, fine. You ask for more of the good stuff, but you're able to handle. But if you have the same exact level of pain and there's no dentist around, you're sitting at home, You're like crying, you're in bed, you're asking your neighbors for Percocet, hopefully not. But I'm saying like you're going and you're like doing whatever it is that you could to alleviate the pain. Now the question is, the same exact level of pain, why is it easier to handle when you have a guy with a mask and a drill doing it versus you're by yourself in the bed? In your own home, you're more comfortable. You're able to handle the pain much better when the dentist is on, when you're in the dentist's office, as opposed to on your own private bed. Why? Why is it easier to handle? The reason is because when you know that the dentist is causing you pain, but it's causing you pain, but it's really helping you. He's giving you, fixing your cavity or doing a root canal, right? We shouldn't know from these things. But when you're going through these things, whatever, anybody here going for dentistry? Okay, no? Okay. So when you think about it, like, it's okay to handle when you know that someone's fixing it. But if you're at your own bed and you're like, oh, well, when is this going to end? Like, I don't know. Is this really for the benefit of me? Like there's no dentist fixing my tooth. It's just pain. It's just throbbing. I feel like there's a little unicorn just like ramming his head, in my brain. Like, you don't know what's going on. And you think about it, like, why? Same exact pain. Because once you know that there's a reason and there's a purpose for your suffering, it's easier to handle. That is where Emunah comes so important when you go through troubles and tribulation. Again, we should never know from suffering. But if God forbid God sends us some sort of suffering, if we realize that God is a dentist, that in the nicest way possible, right? God is healing us through this suffering, well, all of a sudden it's easier to handle. It's easier to deal with. It's easier to understand. It's easier to cope. All of a sudden we live a happier life, even if our life isn't the most pleasant as we would want it. Even if we would want our friend's life and our friend will want our life, but we all of a sudden realize that there's a reason, there's a rhyme, there's a purpose for everything that happens over here, that it's easier to deal with. Rabbi David Hoffman goes and brings down this mashal that one time there was a developer, and this developer always used a certain builder. He figured this builder was a person that he trusted for years and years. Any project, any building, any house that he developed, he would give it to this builder. And this builder, very, very loyal to each other, very, very close. After many, many years, the builder goes over to the developer and says, listen, my wife has been telling me you gotta spend more time with the family, you gotta spend more time with the kids. I gotta go, I gotta spend some more time with the family. I wish I could spend more time over here, but I can't. I have to go and focus on the family. I'm retiring. So the developer goes and says, listen, you're my best contractor. You're like, I send you all the business, like I need you. And the builder is like, listen, I'm so grateful for all the panasah that you've given me throughout the entire years. I'm forever grateful. But what can I tell you is like, I need to go, I need to do me. I need to do my retirement, my family, it's done. So the developer thinks for a second and he's like, you know what? He's like, can you do me one more job? One final job. And the builder's like, listen, I'll ask my wife. If it would be up to me, I would do it with a heartbeat. I really owe you a lot. I'm very grateful. Let me ask my wife. Calls his wife. His wife says, absolutely not. You should not be, let's go. You've retired already. That's done. He goes to the developer and says, listen, my wife said, no, but let me speak to her. Let me talk to her. Let me go. And he goes over to his wife and says, listen, I owe this guy so much. Like, he's done so much for me. He's asked me for one more job. Let me do one more job. And finally she says, fine, you know what? One more job, but then retiring. And the guy says, yeah, they already ordered their condo in Florida on the golf course. He's already in retirement mode. And if you ever known, if you're like in vacation mode and you have to work, it may or may not be your best work. Whatever, you figure it out to yourself. Usually if you're like in, vacation mode already, you're not oh, what do I have to do again? Another this? you're not there. So this person, he decided he's going to sign up, he's going to go to this developer, do one more job. But when he did the job, he was already, golfing, he was already in a different world. So he did the work. What the work really should have taken about a year, he finished about 7 months. The roof really should have been straight. It was a little bit slanted, good for the water, whatever it is, it is, right? The flooring, whatever, it was not the best job possible. You cut over here, cut over there. He just wanted to finish up over here. He's retiring. That's it. It's done. And finally, after 7 months, he finishes that's it. I'm retiring, booking the next, flight out to Florida. He goes over to the developer, hands him the keys. He says, Chazaka Baruch, thank you for all your business. I'm out of here. The contractor takes the developer takes the keys and he says, thank you so much for the last job. says, I have, my final, my parting gift for you, is, and he takes the keys out and he hands it back to the guy. And he says, this is your house. My gift for you is this is your house. The guy's like, what? I mean, thank you so much. I'm so forever grateful to you. The guy's like, if I known that I was building my own house, you know how much careful I would have been? I would have made sure to got only the best of the equipment. I made sure I would have got all the best materials. I would have put in the most advanced system possible. But only afterwards do we realize that we're building it for ourselves. This is the way that life works. God sends us to this world. God sends us tests. God sends us that we have to do mitzvot. And we think, okay, God, I'll do it for you. Okay, fine. You're not going to be angry with me, so I'm going to have a good life. Fine, I'll listen to the Torah. I'll listen to mitzvot. I'll dress modestly. I'll learn Torah. I'll follow the way of the Torah and the mitzvot that I need to do. But if we only stop for a second and realize that God, at the end of the day, after 120, God is going to hand us the keys of everything that we built for ourselves. Be like, you didn't do anything for me. You did everything for you, everything that was for you. And not only that, also the suffering that we go through. Every problem and issue that we go through is a kapara. Also depends on how we handle it, but it's a kapara. It's an atonement of our dealing with. People always ask, how come I was, put in a certain family? How come I'm in a certain, situation healthy-wise? How come I don't have panasah? How come my children? How come this? How come, all the questions come up. But if you have one answer, one word, emunah, if you realize that God, everything happens from God, if you realize that God orchestrates everything and God is building a mansion for you, but really, you're building your own mansion. And everything that you do, how you relate to every single thing that you do, how you go and you result in a certain test, are you going to take it on with happiness? Are you going to take it on with appreciation? Or are you going to start complaining? Are you going to start kvetching? Are you going to start saying, why me? Why this? Why that? All these questions that come up all builds your house, depending on the materials that you're going to build your mansion in the next world. This is what Emunah is. Rabbi Avigdor Miller goes and says that if you ask somebody, what would be more important? To give someone advice on the spiritual aspect of their life or the physical aspect on their life? What would be more important? So generally, especially if you're speaking to a rabbi, you'll say for sure spiritual. Spiritual, most important thing. Physical, says Rabbi Avigdor Miller, no. You know what's the most important thing? In most cases, the most important advice that you could give somebody is for the physical well-being. And he explains why. He says that generally, you could categorize things into three categories. Something that is a mitzvah, a good deed that you do. Something that is a bad deed, a sin, an averah, a bad thing that you do. Or something neutral. So you have good, bad, and neutral. But really, he says, when you think about it, there's no neutral. He says, and he brings this particular example. Whoever knows Rabbi Avigdor Miller everything was very, very particular. He would take walks. He was very healthy. He was very, conscious. One time, his grandson walked in the kitchen, and his head was underwater, and for quite some time. Now, his grandson, also a student of his, was sitting over there. You see the rabbi, long white beard, sitting over there underwater. And you go, you just sit and wait. 10 seconds go by. 15 seconds. When someone, it's like every second is like a year. And finally, after about 30 seconds, the rabbi picks his head out of the water and takes a deep breath. Takes a deep breath in. And his grandson is just walked in. He's like, Zaidi, Grandpa, Rabbi, what you doing? What's going on? And the grandfather goes, and I used to learn a block away from his shul in Mary Yeshiva in Ocean Parkway. So I used to see him walk down Ocean Parkway. He would take walks down Ocean Parkway, and and I would remember he would go with a little notepad. He would have a little notepad, jot down his little thoughts, and he tells his grandson. So one time, I was walking down Ocean Parkway, and with an acquaintance of mine, and the acquaintance was saying, look at all this pollution that goes on. Look at all this air that we're breathing in New York City. How many cars are driving down Ocean Parkway? I mean, it's nice, you have trees, but all the cars that are driving down, it's not all electric cars. There's all this air that you're breathing in. People that live in Brooklyn don't realize what air actually smells and tastes like, because once you go to the country, you'll be like, wait a minute, what's this weird smell? But that's pure? What does that mean? Where's the pollution? I need to get my pollution fix. And this acquaintance was telling Rabbi Avigdor Miller, look at all this pollution. And Rabbi Avigdor Miller says, I started not appreciating air so much. So I came home, I filled the sink up to water, and I put my head underwater. What do you think about when your head is underwater? You don't think about what your business is. You don't think about the argument that you had with your spouse. You don't think about the issue. You think about one thing and one thing only. Air, 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 depending on how your blood is flowing to your brain, how fast it's going, right? And that's all you're thinking about. And then finally, after I felt like I couldn't hold myself anymore, I took my head out of the water and I took that first breath of air. And then when you take that first breath of air, it's like, oh, do you appreciate air when you can have air? Now, when I go on Ocean Parkway, I'll appreciate it. That's the way Rabbi Victor Miller was. That he was so particular in everything that crazy tzaddik talmid chacham. So Rabbi Victor Miller goes and says that I needed that introduction to give you this example that he gave. He says, let's say you finish eating a meal and there is a piece of chocolate cake sitting in front of you. And you're like, you know what, let me have a piece of chocolate cake. And you start eating this chocolate cake. Now, is that chocolate cake, is that a mitzvah or is that something wrong? Well, it depends. Chocolate cake is not always so healthy. So it's not good for your weight. It's not good for your, for your health. So while you're eating it, it's a big problem. It's avara, it's a sin. But then let's say you go and you're in a down mood and the chocolate cake will uplift your spirits. So all of a sudden, now it's a mitzvah. Now you need it. You need the, again, I'm not giving therapeutic advice to anybody, but I'm saying now you need it. But then, now that you eat a chocolate cake, what's going to happen a few hours later when you're going to weigh yourself on the scale? All of a sudden, it's going to depress you. So now it's an avera again. Oh, yeah. So what does Rabbi Victor Miller says? Nothing in this world is simple. Nothing in this world is straightforward. But what do we learn from this? That everything correlates to the spiritual. Everything that you do in the physical world correlates to the spiritual world. You think you're doing something that has nothing related to. Everything is related to the spiritual world. Everything. Every iota, everything that you do. Now, says Rabbi Victor Miller, and he goes and he says that if you go and if you are a happy person, you're having a good day. How's your spiritual service of God? Amazing, great. What happens if you're depressed, you're sad, you're down? All of a sudden your spiritual service is down. So which means is depending on your mood, depending on everything that you are going through in that day, it affects your spiritual service. So when someone goes and asks you, is this better spiritual advice or physical advice? Really, physical advice is better. Why? Because physical advice is the one that feeds the spiritual advice. You realize that we're on this earth for about 120 years. After you leave this earth, that's it. The way that you leave is the way that you stay. You can't change after you get into the next world. You can't be like, well, I'm really a nicer person. If you are not a nicer person in this world, you're not going to be a nicer person in the next world. And again, whatever that means in itself. But you can't, everything that happens in the next world is all related to this world. So it all depends on your physical well-being. So which means is that there's no such thing as a neutral thing. Something is either going to be positive or either is going to be negative. And Rabbi Victor Miller goes and says, some people think they learn the Chavot Alavot, they learn Mesilat, they learn Musaf Sefrim, they learn about Emunah, they think, okay, I'm learning for the next world. So Rabbi Victor Miller, you're not learning for the next world, you're learning for this world, you're learning for right here, right now. That's what you're learning for. And sometimes what we need in order to have merit, to be able to get something in this world, sometimes when we have Emunah, that actually gives us the merit to get what we actually want. And I'll give you an example of this story. There was once a religious person that lived in Tel Aviv. But this is a person that was had Emunah, Bitachon on such a high level, that, nothing bothered him. Everything was in God's hands. And he was in the business of buttons. He would buy, wholesale buttons and sell it for, so you're talking about many years ago in Tel Aviv. And he would sell it, sell it to stores and different distributors. So he had 7 children at one point, and he had enough money to put food on the table, but that's about it. Finally, one day he had 7 children, about 2-bedroom apartment, and his wife comes in and says, "Listen, the Tel Aviv is not so really good to, the children are getting older, the children are getting sharper, they see what's going on in the street. It's not really so apropos. Says we need to move somewhere more religious for the children." So they decided the best place for them to go is Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak, a very religious place, good place to raise your children. So they decided they're going to move to Bnei Brak. But the problem is that how are they going to go and move Tel Aviv? Bnei Brak, real estate is really high over there. It's very expensive. How are they going to go and then move to Bnei Brak? So, but this person, this is the father, he said, listen, if this is what needs to be done, then it needs to be done. They go and they meet with a builder. And the builder gives them different ideas and says, listen, there's a certain building that I'm building with. It's going to cost you X amount of money. If you want, you could put down a deposit and you could, put for an apartment. So this guy says, fine, not a problem, sounds good. He goes and he calls, and he had a few people that owed him money, and he called everybody that he knew that owed him money, and he gathered together 1,500 lirot. And he took this and he put it as a down payment for the building for the apartment that he wanted in this new building. And the builder said, fine, I'll take it. And then you owe another balance of 6,000 lirot, meaning that you could do it in another 4 payments of, let's say, 1,500 lirot each. So the guy says, fine, not a problem. They go, they sign the contract, and he starts building. Meanwhile, the winter goes by, and the summer goes by. They have enough money to put bread on the table, but they don't have any money to put on the side to put for this down payment for the rest of the house. So after a certain period of time, by the way, this guy, nothing bothered him. Emunah, Bitachon, just lived his life regular. Finally, when the time came to pay the full balance, he didn't do any payments. He spoke to his wife and said, listen, we don't have any money to pay the full balance. So they said, what are we going to do? So there's nothing we do. We cancel the contract, lose the deposit, whatever it needs to be done. He goes and he meets with the contractor. And he goes to the contractor, and the contractor goes and says, no, I'm not letting you out of this agreement. He says, we made an agreement, you have to make this agreement. But, says, I see you're a good family. I will make you a deal. Move into the building, whenever you're able to pay me, pay me. The guy says, fine. He says, why are you doing this? He says, I build my apartment next to yours. I wanted good neighbors. I see you're good, upright people, good children. I want good neighbors for my children. Says it's worth it for me to bite it a little bit and hold it a little bit until you pay me off. So they said fine. They moved their kids to Bnei Brak. They put them in the best schools possible. The kids were succeeding. Everybody was going great. However, they still didn't have any money to pay the rest of the bill for this apartment. Some time goes by. And suddenly, his supplier that he would get all the buttons from calls him up and calls him up, right? One of those things. And he calls him up and he says, I'm closing up, I'm retiring. I'm willing to sell you all my equipment. You're my best buyer, so I'm willing to sell you all my equipment. And he sold it for a crazy discount, 500 lirot. And this person heard about it. He's like, what? Are you kidding me? He's like, of course I want to buy it. He goes and he borrows a 500 lirot. He goes and he buys all this equipment from this button manufacturer. And he goes and he had an extra apartment. The apartment that he built in Bnei Brak was a bigger apartment. He had an extra room. He put all these machines in one room. And he showed it. He had 7 children. He showed the children how to make a button, and they were so excited. They loved it, and they started working after school. Before school, they started working, creating, building buttons for him. And meanwhile, in the beginning, obviously the buttons were not usable. But eventually, he had a little factory, a free factory, working on, child labor. Whatever. Everything was completely free. And he would tell his friends, he'd be like, it's unbelievable. He says, I have a factory, rent free. I don't have to pay the workers anything. It's unbelievable. I'm living the life over here. And word got out, and word got out to his main competition, the biggest competition. There's a kibbutz in Israel that manufacture buttons, and they hear that there's a huge manufacturing, you know how word gets out, right? There's a huge manufacturing company in Bnei Brak that has free workers. They don't pay any rent. They're going to corner the market. They're going to take over this. They figure the businessman of that button man, which was much bigger than his, he says, I got to buy this guy out at all costs. He calls this guy up. He says, I want to buy you out. He says, wait a minute. I just bought this business. I'm going to buy it to sell it? Not interested. So he starts bringing up the money, for whatever he was offered. He kept on raising the prices. Finally, he goes, this father of 7 goes over to him and says, listen, I owe my contractor 6,000 left over for my bills that I need to pay for this apartment. You want it? I'll sell it to you for 6,000 lirot. The guy says, I'll buy it today. I'm going to be right there. He came with a moving truck that day. They sold it, and he went and he paid everything off for the building. He built it. Within a few months, he had everything covered. Why? Because sometimes Emunah, the fact that you just have Emunah, you live a calm life, you do what you need to do, God will take care of you. But this brings us to a little bit of a flip side in it. I speak to many people, and this is very, very common. Regret. People who regret. Oh, the amount of pain and suffering that people go through with regret. By the way, this could go through, to be careful how I say this. Regret could be anything from, let's speak first nicely. Let's say somebody goes and will say, growing up, I could have went and invested in Apple and Microsoft, and I didn't invest in them. I was like, who's going to buy a computer? Who needs computers? Tablets, what are tablets? You think about, and then if I would have just put my money in there, I would have been able to retire. Yeah, people that go on their regret be like, if only I would have went and I would have married this person. You also have another side of the regret, which is a little bit more unfortunate. If I wouldn't have married this person, if only I wouldn't have married this person. Regret goes and it destroys a person, but it goes even on a day-to-day basis. You go shopping and you forgot to put in the the little ticket in the millimeter, from on your car, and all of a sudden you get a ticket and be like, oh, if only I would have spent 25 cents, then I wouldn't have gotten the ticket. Regret overcomes, our lives. The should have, the could haves that we have. Emunah handles all these issues. It's also when someone goes through a certain issue, it's not even someone, you have, let's say, two people, each lose $100. They had $100 in their pocket, and they make the same amount of money. You have one person doesn't sleep for a week. Be like, oh my God, I can't believe I lost $100. You have another person bothers them for exactly 60 seconds, and then they move on. What happened? How come one person, it's not because how much money they have in the bank. It's not because you have people that are multi-billionaires that they don't tip somebody because, oh, no. You have somebody who has no money and they give the biggest tip possible. It's not about how much money you have in the bank. What is it? It's all about how you handle it. The truth is, the bottom line is how much Emunah and Bitachon that you have. And again, I'm not relating how much tip you give to Emunah, whatever. Everything's related to Emunah and Bitachon. But everything, the way that you handle every situation is all related to the Emunah that you have. Now, in general, you have about 4 different choices on how to live life. You could either have it in one that you're tense and nervous about everything that happens in your life. Either you're thinking like everything that happens is all in my hands. I'm going to be able to succeed or am I going to fail? It all depends on how much effort, how much ishtadlut. Ooh, key word over here. How much ishtadlut that I'm going to put into it. Then you have somebody on level 2. Level 2 is somebody with someone who has severe anxiety. Like the only way that they could manage their anxiety is only with other people's help. They need other people to help them. They need other people to speak to them. They need other people to deal with them. They need other issues that they have to handle. Other businesses have to go and help them. That's the only way they're going to survive. Then you have step 3, which goes a step above. So you have like tense and nervous. Then you have severe anxiety. And then you have one step after that, which is depression, meaning that nobody could help me. I'm done. Like there's no hope for me. There's nothing that could be done. Then you have step 4. Step 4 is somebody who lives life with complete calm and tranquility and serenity and just like peacefulness, menuchat nefesh that you have, just like joy and happiness in life. Says the Chovot Al-Vavot in the introduction to Sha'ar Bitachon, says that it is impossible for a person to be worry-free. Again, it is impossible for a person to be worry-free without trusting in Hashem, without trusting in God. You want to know the secret for success, for a worry-free life, for a happy life? It's one word, it's Emunah. That is when you realize that that is the secret to your happiness, the secret to your success, the secret to everything in your life that you're searching for is Emunah. The Chovot Al-Vavot goes and brings down 5 benefits, and we'll be done in a few minutes. The Chovot Al-Vavot brings down 5 benefits for Emunah. Number 1, you are free from all worries. When you learn Emunah, you don't have to take pills. You don't have to drink alcohol. You don't have to take drugs. You don't have to do anything. You're like soaring through the clouds at all times in a legal high. Like you're in you could drive while high in Emunah. Like it's okay. Like you're able to do that. That's number 1. You're free from worry. Number 2, you're not dependent on other people. Many people, unfortunately, they have to make sure that the boss is happy and they make sure that this is happy. They're always focused on other people. And again, it's good to make sure that other people are happy, but your focus is to make sure that God is happy. You have so many people that they care about what other people, but what God says doesn't matter. Shabbat, it doesn't matter. Tzniut doesn't matter. Halachot doesn't matter. Oh, well, my boss, I have to, and ishtadlut. Come on, Rabbi, I have to do ishtadlut. But they focus on the wrong things in life. They're not dependent on other people. That's number 2. Number 3, they're able to serve God. They're able to serve Hashem without any distraction. Number 4, they're going to have happiness in their life. By the way, number 4 itself should be just something that should sell you. Happiness in life is that's what everyone strives for. Number 5. They're not influenced by money, which is very important. The Midrash in Shemot goes and brings down that when in the darkness in Egypt, in the Makat Choshech, it was known that how did the Midrash go and explain the darkness? It was known as a dinar zahav. It's a currency, it's a coin, the most highest value coin in Egypt during that time. Now, why did they use a term to describe darkness with money? Like thick, like this money. Like why do they have to use that? The answer is because money blinds you. Money has the ability to go and make people's eyes dark, make people's lives dark. Our entire life, we're marketing is such a strong impact in our life that it tells us what we need. It tells us how we're going to be happy. It tells us, you're only going to be happy if you go and you get a degree. You're only going to be happy if you're going to make money. You're only going to be happy if you're going to have this type of situation. You're only happy if you have this phone. You're only happy if you have this car. We're constantly bombarded with how we need to live our lives. People are trying to constantly sell us things. The goal of people's lives becomes sucked into this and be like, well, maybe it's true. Maybe this is what I need to be happy. So they get involved, let's say, in business. So what happens in business? You have somebody that's completely involved in business, that his entire life is focused on business. That even while he's in a trip with his family, He's on his phone the whole time. He's going and he's trying to, make more deals even while he's on vacation. He's sleeping, he's dreaming about his business, or she's dreaming about their work, whatever it is. They're constantly focused and be like, wait a minute, why are you focused on? Because this is what people are telling you. This is what people are selling you. Money blinds you to what you really need to do. That's why the Midrash goes and uses the Dinar Zahav as an explanation of how thick the plague of darkness was. I want to finish off with one final story that this is written by Rabbi David Asher, brings this down in his book Living Emunah, which, by the way, I'll say this a lot during this series. Very, very, read it. Do it. Just do it. Let's live it. Just do it. The Or HaChaim in Pasuk Beshalach says like this, that if someone needs any help from God, and they see that they're not bringing it, an act of misirut nefesh, an act of self-sacrifice is able to go and tip the scales to be able to get you what you want in your life. And he goes and brings the story from Rav Chaim Zayad from Yeshivat Nachlat Shlomo in Bnei Brak, that this rabbi had, Rav Zayad had a student that was 22 years old that had a brain tumor. And this student was sent to France for treatment, and they weren't able to go and heal him. And the family tried whatever they could to go and say, it's a 22-year-old guy, he's such a young guy. They tried whatever they could to go and save him. And they found out that there is a certain doctor in America by the name of Professor Rich. And that was his name, giving you exactly that. And he had a reputation for healing these type of situations. But in this particular situation, insurance wouldn't cover it. And they sent him all the documents over, and he says, I would be able to go and operate on this, but the operation cost $130,000. This is a story that's going back quite a few years. And they went and they tried to call all the organizations. No one would be able to upfront that cost of $130,000. Furthermore, the patient, which was this 22-year-old boy, he was very sick. He wouldn't be able to fly to America. They would have to fly the doctor out from America to Israel to operate, and the doctor charged another $30,000 for that, for that fee as well. So they figured whatever they tried, nothing was working. All doors were closed. One day, the rabbi was very, very involved in this situation. He's trying to make the phone calls, trying to help this boy. One day, the rabbi gets a phone call from this boy's sister, a woman by the name of Michal Abitol. And she calls up. This is the boy Uriel. The boy's name's Uriel. His sister calls him up and says, listen, Rabbi, make order the procedure. We're going to cover the expenses. And be like, wait a minute, how are you going to cover the expenses? He knows that, your husband is a kollel guy. He learns all day. He learns so he's not making money. Like, where's he going to get $130,000? They said they have a house in Bet Shemesh. They're putting the house on the market. And they're putting whatever the money comes, whatever they get from it, it's going to this expense. And in fact, their house is worth a lot more money than $130,000, but they wanted the money quick. They're putting it at a discount price. Whoever gets to pay cash, whoever gets to close quickly, gets the apartment. So they put it at $130,000. And so the rabbi goes and says, wait a minute. He says, are you sure this is okay? You have 6 children. You're sitting and you have an apartment. Like, what are you going to do? He says, we can't give up. He says, we're a family. We love our brother. We can't give up. We're doing whatever we can. I spoke to my husband. This is what we're doing. As much as the rabbi tried to go and convince them out of it, they would not do it. So the rabbi said, fine. He calls the professor, calls the doctor, says, we want to schedule the appointment. Meanwhile, they got the 100. He still needed 30,000, for the transplantation. 30,000 he could raise. He called all the students, and he says each student should try to go and commit themselves to 1,000 shekel to go and raise. And how are they going to go house to house, go whatever it is that you need to do. So a bunch of students one night went. They took a bunch of cabs, and they went from house to house, to go and raise money for their fellow student to go to have this operation. And one night after they finish, one group of students, after they finish collecting in a certain cab, the cab driver goes over to them and says, listen, he says, there's a guy who I picked up a short while ago, and there's a bag over here. Can you drop it off at a certain location? And when someone says something like there's a bag in my trunk, that I need to drop off at a certain location, they're like, wait, something is like off over here. Like, is this legal? Like, what's going on? He's like, no, it's completely. It's like, and they're like, listen, we can't make the decision. We're here on behalf of our rabbi. Let's call the rabbi. So they call the rabbi, and the rabbi says, sounds fishy, don't do it. So the cab driver is hearing the conversation, says, can I speak to the rabbi? I'll bring you guys back to the yeshiva. Let me speak to the rabbi. Let me explain to, the situation of what's going on. They say, fine, whatever it is. If you want to come when we're coming in, you could go speak to the rabbi. He goes over, they drop off the boys in front of the yeshiva. The rabbi, they mention to the rabbi to come out. The rabbi comes out. And the taxi driver goes and says, listen, he says, I would really drop it off myself. I know where this person is staying, but I feel so bad. It was so long ago, it was so many hours ago, that it's so much time has elapsed that I felt bad going and returning this, this object back to this person. And I just feel guilty. Can you go and get one of your students? I'll drive them. It's just returning a lost item. So the rabbi says, well, I need to see what's in the bag. So he goes and he opens the bag and he sees a bunch of tools. And he looks at the name tag on the bag over there, Dr. Professor Rich. And the rabbi's like, what? And he turns all white, and he's like, we'll take care of this. You're going to take me to his. He calls up the doctor, and he says, meet me in your lobby in your hotel room in 10 minutes. They go, and the doctor comes down over there, and there the rabbi is sitting there with his bag. And now this is the turn where the doctor turns all white. He's like, where did you find my bag? He says, I was going crazy. For hours I was looking, I was calling, I didn't know what I did, where my bag went. He says, I wouldn't be able to do anything with the operation without this bag. And he says, and he goes and he started explaining, you don't understand. He says, I had a bunch of students go and raise money to be able to have this operation. And he's like, what do you mean raise money? He's like, what's going on? And he started explaining to him. He says, you don't know, what's going on with the back end of the story. He says, there was a sister that went and they didn't have money for this operation. She went and she put her house on the market. She sold her house for a discounted price for $130,000 so that she'd be able to have this operation. But we were still short $30,000, so I sent my students to go and collect money. In the cab of the students that were going and driving from house to house to go get the money, where was your bag? His bag was right there. And the doctor was so moved by it, he says, you know what? He says, this bag is worth in itself about $40,000 of equipment. But really, it's more than that. I designed all this equipment myself. I'm the only one who does these operations. It took me, years and years of research and development and how to go and bring about these things. It's worth so much to me. And when he heard the story about what the sister said, he says, listen, this operation is on the house. He says, you don't have to pay for anything. This is all on the house. So all of a sudden, the sister gets a phone call, and she sold the house already. There's some guy went and said for $130,000 a house in Bet Shemesh, done. Where do I sign? He went and he signed it and he bought it. So she couldn't get. Now they had $130,000 back in their account, but they had nowhere to live. So the sister was going to husband said, listen, we always want to live in Yerushalayim. Let's go look in Yerushalayim. So they go meet with some sort of broker. They're going from house to. Meanwhile, as they're walking through the streets of Yerushalayim, they see this beautiful 5-bedroom house. And they go in and they start looking in over there. The owner is over there. There was a for sale sign. So they saw the owner. Were speaking to the owner. And they were like, this is like perfect for the perfect area, perfect size, everything that they needed. So they go to the owner and they say to the owner, how much are you asking for this? So he said he's asking $310,000. Scramble the letters. They had 130. So like, well, we have less than half. He's like, what? You have less than half? Why are you wasting my time? It's a house. Where are you going to find a house for $130,000? He's talking about years ago. Now you can't find for $300,000. But so long ago, they were going and they say, $130,000. Where are you going to find a house? And the sister, this woman who was going over there says, listen, she says, let me tell you the story of how we even came up there. And she says, I had a brother, and my brother was sick, and I had to go and he's like, wait a minute. And that's saying he's like, you're the sister? And she's like, wait, you know the story? He's like, I'm the cab driver. He's like, I'm the one who was there. And he says, I just got an inheritance from my aunt, and I'm moving. That's why I'm moving. He says, you know what? From everything that happened, pay whatever you use that you have. The story that's written down, it's brought down. This is a true story. And she goes and she gets all of a sudden she gets $130,000. She puts down for a house that's worth more than double that. In Yerushalayim. Sometimes when we go through life, and we're not sure what to do. When we do what we need to do from God, God will take care of us. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't see it immediately. But ultimately, we will only gain from that. That is the benefit of living your life with Emunah. Living your life with Bitachon. Living your life knowing that there's God that is controlling everything. Living your life that there's a rhyme and a reason, there's a purpose for everything that happens in your life. You know how happy you'll be? Nothing can turn you down. Nothing can make you suffer. Nothing can break your spirits. But how do we get to that level? How do we get to the level? And that's why, when I was thinking about structuring this series and how to go about doing it, it's not only about the information that you will get from these type of classes. You have to actually implement this in your day-to-day lives. And that's why this series I plan on doing very differently than I did for the other series. I want to delve in a lot of topics. But not only that, but what I figured with the most important, what brings it home is stories. Stories really bring it home. Really, but the goal is to not only intellectually think about that there's Emunah. Not only to actually intellectually realize that there's Bitachon, that there's God, but to bring it home to your heart. Bring it home to live your daily life. So we're going to, B'ezrat Hashem, this is why my goal is, with God's help, to be able to go and present this topic in a way that not only to just give you the information, but to give you the information in a way that's going to be instilled in your heart, that it's sort of like an exercise that you have to work on a daily, So B'ezrat Hashem, the goal is to have this, like a longer series than the shorter one. With that being said, I have to do one final announcement that a few weeks ago, we made a little bit of announcement about an organization called Daily Giving. dailygiving.org. This is an organization that what they do is, and by the way, it's such an amazing organization that I was like, why couldn't I think about that? Like I promote it with such like it's so amazing, because what they do is, for whoever is not familiar with it, is that they go and they give $1 a day. You give $1 a day, and they give that charity to that's tzedakah to a different charity every single day. So what's the beauty of this? Is that there's so many organizations that you want to be involved in. There's so many organizations that you want to be, you're like connected to. Like, it's awesome, but like you can't always go and give this is like sort of having like your stockbroker in the spiritual world. You're about like, okay, invest me my money in a bunch of organizations. You like do that, and every month what you do is you give them like a $30. It's like $31 because you pay a little bit for the for the credit card fees. So every day you give them $1 a day, and they take that and they give it to a different organization every single day. I spoke about this a few weeks ago, I think it was, and they messaged back to me that Baruch Hashem, from that class we had a large amount of people that signed up. I think close to
It's 988 now.
980. I think when we said it last time, it was about $100 or something. So we had about close to 40 people sign up from that class. And what was the most fascinating is where he told me where these people signed up from. You had people from Austria, Rome. I'm reading directly what he sent to me. Austria, Rome, Philippines, New Zealand, Mexico, England, and throughout the entire U.S. Where you had people that go, that they listen, and they went and they heard this. But the beautiful part is that where I give credit for these people is that we all get inspired. We all hear things that we want to do. But how many people go and actually go and do it? How many people go and be like, yeah, let me implement this? This is so important for the Emunah topic, because you listen to this topic, how many people are going to go and implement it in their daily lives? It's nice, you heard some nice stories, maybe it was entertaining, maybe you had some, what is it, pizza today? Pizza today, you had some food, and then you move, or do you implement it in your life? You have some people, they hear something and be like, wait a minute, I want to capitalize on that. This is an opportunity I want to do. You have 40 people that went and they decided from all over the world that they decided they're going to go and they're going to capitalize on this mitzvah of giving tzedakah every single day to a different organization. So I recommend each and every single one of you, whoever listens, whoever is here, to think about this. You have an ability, it doesn't cost a lot, $1 a day where you're able to go and be a part of a bigger picture, be a part of a cloud, where you're able to go and donate to different organizations so anywhere from Eitan, from infertility to Torah Anytime, to go and spread Torah. You have everything. Give your regular places that you give to as well. But here you have the ability to touch people, to touch like organizations. When is the last time that you gave an organization that saves Jewish families that got stuck in Arab territories? When was the last time that you helped orphans get married? Like, here you have a organization that you give money, and they go and they're your stockbrokers. They're going and they're giving you dividends that you don't even know about. That's how amazing it is. So I strongly recommend that not only that you go and look into this organization, dailygiving.org, that is dailygiving.org, very simple, but
Giving or living?
Giving, dailygiving.org. Very, very important to look into it. But also, whenever you go to any Torah class, whenever you read any Torah book, what is it that you're going to take out in your life? There are some people that they go and they leave a class gaining something every single class. There's some people that don't. For the person that takes away, succeeded, and the class was a success and was worth it. For somebody that didn't, it was gone. The series that we're, B'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, going to go and try to accomplish is going to implement it into your daily lives. However, you could listen to it and it won't change your lives one bit. But you could listen to it and implement it and feel it and change it and really bring it to another level where your life really will be a worry-free life. Now, who doesn't want that? But in order to do that, it takes a little bit of work. The work is that you have to implement not only the topics that we're going to speak about, anything that you learn about Emunah, anything you learn about Torah, implement it. You hear about an organization that's amazing. You have the ability to go and give them. It's amazing. By the way, I don't get anything from it. Well, spiritually I do, not physically, in this world. But like, when you think about it, not only that you should give, try to get other people to give. I mean, I can guarantee you this thing is going to be huge. It's going to be big. You want to be, when something gets big, Do you want to go and regret it afterwards? Be like, well, I could have been the part of this. I could have, been a part of Apple and Microsoft and Google, so long ago. Or I could have been part of Daily Giving. I could have been a part of Torah anytime. There's things that are going to blow up in the next few years. And I'm telling you, this is, in my opinion, this is one of the things that are going to blow up. Join them, help them, be a part of something greater than yourself. Be a part of something that helps the Jewish nation in all different aspects. Not just what you know, not just what you think is important, but all different aspects. With that, we'll open up to any questions.
I want to ask you something.
Yes.
Let's say I received right now the message that a fourth synagogue they're building, they need funds. So how does the organization you just go, they help? I mean, everybody needs, but don't they have like a center thing that, let's say, to plug in to the help?
So if you're asking how this organization chooses,
Yes.
they have a team of rabbinical advisors. If you go to the website, they have a team. I was speaking to the one who started it, and I was speaking about a certain organization. You know how much list they have of organizations that ran over to them, and they want to be part of this because they're basically getting money. So they want to be part of that organization. So you have to go and speak to them. You have to see if you get a part of it. I know right now they're a little bit on a hold. They have a long list of people that is on the list, but they're slowly building up every day they're giving to different organizations to do. How to get on it, then you go and speak to them. Go to www.dailygiving.org. That is dailygiving.org.
So I can recommend that site to the people who actually needed funds too?
Everybody needs funds, but you could recommend what you think they need funds and then see what happens. I don't know. I don't run the organization. I'm not part, what I am part of it is only recommending, saying that it's an amazing organization. I know them. They're amazing people. So speak to them. If you want to go, reach out to them. And if they don't put you on the list, at least put them on the line. Maybe they'll put you on the, there's a long list, but definitely an organization to be involved in from whichever angle you could be from.
Could you give Maser?
Yes, 100% Masel. Yes.
Is Maser from your net or your gross?
Net. Masel is from your net, not from your gross. So if somebody goes and has a business, and their business made a profit of, let's say, $2,000, let's say the business made a profit of $3,000 that month, but they had to pay $1,000 in the workers or rent or whatever it is, meaning that they netted into their pocket $2,000, then Masel is 10% of that, so it will be $200 of that. So it will be out of your net, not out of your gross. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a difference between the Sion and the Kaparos you mentioned?
Ooh, good question. Is there a difference between Nisayan and Kaparos? So, yes and no, depending on what it is that you're dealing with. So, when you have a test can go and help you grow in the positive. And again, I'm speaking very vague because we're speaking very hypothetical. So, a test could help you in the positive. So, let's say you're on level 80 and then you have a test. So, now you're able to pass to like 81 or 82 or 83. When you have a suffering, that suffering could cleanse your back end of your issues, but at the same point in time, depending on how you react to every suffering is a nisayon. Every suffering is a kapara. So they're really interchangeable, and it really depends on how you relate to it. So if you have a suffering, that is really a test also. So now not only can you cleanse the back end, but you could also move up a few steps depending on how. So the way that I'm trying to make it very clear. Let's say you have a certain suffering, so you go through that suffering and makes a kapara, but also how you react to that suffering could raise you another level. So you understand how they could work interrelated. They're really, really strongly connected.
If the person who brings the suffering on himself, like attention, like to the people to feel sorry for him, does it mean he cleans himself? Or
So that is a long discussion. But obviously we want to speak about what happens, and the question is an amazing question. I'm not going to be able to answer it now because it's a long, what happens if someone messes up in their own life? Is that a test? Is that a kapara? Is that an atonement? That's an excellent question, and I don't want to answer it because it's going to take me a really long time, and I want to answer correctly. So B'ezrat Hashem, it's in a class in itself to discuss about that. Yes and no, depending on a lot of factors.
I have another question.
Yes.
You kept saying how if you do good stuff, Hashem is going to do good to you, right? And I believe that, and I believe in that. However, there's a concept of bad things happening for people, right? And I know you kind of explained it, but how can you go and say you do good and you get good? Is that going directly against that?
So when let's say you go and you're trying to do something good and you see that bad constantly happens to you. So first of all, I do have a few classes on it that I would recommend. I go through quite a few details on how do we understand why bad things happen to good people.
I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning why you're saying, like, you do good if it happens.
Right. So the way that it works is
Going against that thing.
right. Yeah. Right. I think I understand what you're saying. So when you're doing, the concept is that if you follow God, you're not going to lose out. However, that it's never, or I shouldn't say never, it's not always so outwardly simply understood that, okay, so you decide you're going to come to a Torah class and now everything's going to work well for you, like all of a sudden. Like it doesn't always work out, like that you could see it. Like sometimes, let's say you have a guy that goes, at the end game, it's going to be for your benefit. How and when we'll see that. Sometimes you see that immediately. Sometimes you see that after a few years. And sometimes you only see that after 120. But the concept is, with 100% validity, is that if you listen to God, you don't lose out. When you see that you don't lose out, that's a question. You have people that became religious, and then they lost their business. How is that for their bad? Again, we're not God. But what we do know is that if you do follow God's Torah, you do listen to that, you're not going to lose out. It might be in a day. It might be that instant. It might be in a year. It might be, again, after 120. Yes? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Does what apply by females? Aseh l'charav. If you're not married, then yeah. And if if let's say a Baal Tshuva situation, then most definitely. Aseh l'charav. Do you have to go make yourself a rabbi? So if you're married, the husband really should be the one that should be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a woman having a rav, also to ask shalos to. I think that's very important as well. But especially if, let's say, many situations, you have people that come from a non-religious background, they become religious, they absolutely need a rabbi. How are they going to know what to do? So absolutely also applies to females in certain situations. And in certain situations, it's really on the husband's, how to choose a rabbi is a whole long discussion.
Bitachon has a share on it.
Oh yeah, there you go. Rabbi Bitachon has a share. I'll tell you like this. What's very important, I always strongly recommend, for halachic questions, there is an unbelievable rabbi by the name of Rabbi Shai Tahan. And he has WhatsApp groups.
He's the one that texts you back.
Yes. I have never met a rabbi that you're able to go, and he has a WhatsApp specifically for halachot. A woman separate, men separate. So if you want to be a part of that, you could reach out to me privately, and I could go and set you up for that. He's a huge rabbi in like halachot, top, and he's going to go and he's be able to give you whatever it is that you need to, and it's unbelievable. So you have some people that have, let's say, some people like joining just to read the chats. Because it's interesting questions, and they see the answers, and be like, oh, they learned just from the halachot, they're going back and forth.
You see all the stuff you're not allowed to do, or the stuff you've been doing wrong.
Yeah, exactly. There's many halachot. Most of the time, you see that people that they think that they're not allowed to do something. Really, you're allowed to do it. They just never know. They never ask. And sometimes they're doing something which is wrong, which is like what you said, and they're really not supposed to be doing it. So, again, it's very, very important. How to choose a rabbi? Long discussion. How to choose a rabbi? You have to do good research and make sure that you're following.
Okay, but I'm talking about in a personal stuff. Let's say my daughter, she's 19 years old, and I like you said, I'm Baal Shul for 3 years. I sent all my children to yeshiva, and she comes from yeshiva and she says, Mom, I believe there's a creed, but I do not believe in Torah. I think it was written by man. They all masculines or whatever. The Torah is all about man and their
Chauvinistic.
Yes, and she says there's nothing, and it's all written by man, and that's it. And
Send it to me. I'll take care of her. I have a guy. No, I'm kidding. I have a whole topics on this.
and I saw all your lectures. I have a big.
That didn't help. You didn't have to give me that last bit of information.
She comes, she listens. I like this guy. He talks fast, and I like. But she's still, unconvincible. I mean, I don't understand. I says, you went to yeshiva. I never went to yeshiva in my life.
Yeah, it happens.
And I realized she says, Mom, it's all bullshit. If you're so gullible, then it's up to you. That's what she tells me.
Let me speak to her. Whenever it is. No, I'm serious. I'm not joking. I'm like, we'll have a discussion. I'll argue with her, debate with her, whatever it is that she wants it. Like, I'll convince her, whatever it is, we'll work it out. If she's interested in talking, she might just want in her mind to say that it doesn't exist because then she wants to live her life. But if she's really searching and she really wants it, B'simcha. I'll sit with her and I'll talk with her.
Part of the class.
We could do it part of the class. We do it privately. Most people like doing it privately.
This is part of the class, and this is so important.
Yeah.
I'm gonna reach out to you for this.
Yeah.
How?
I love the question.
Either
I know somebody who would probably need this as well.
reach out either by email or phone or whatever. We have to schedule a time. And these conversations take a long time. So
I think the way what she's describing is
I'll say
a unique situation.
very simple. Next week, whenever it is that I'm here next time, bring her in. Afterwards, we'll turn off the camera. We'll have the discussion with her. Whenever it is that she wants, whatever it is, I'm here. In person, or I could do it over the phone.
She needs convincing
Again,
there's free food.
if she wants to go and ask questions, then I'm willing to answer. If she's just looking for excuses to get out, then I can't answer excuses. I can answer questions. So if she's willing, b'chavod, we'll have a discussion. Bring her.
Well,
Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay, chazak u'baruch.